This is The Process Shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a 3-act formula, and I've seen The People We Hate at the Wedding, a new comedy feature from director Claire Scanlon. It follows a dysfunctional family of 4. Alice, an architect turned assistant who is dating her married boss. Paul, a therapist whose boyfriend wants their relationship to open up. Donna, their estranged and widowed mother. And Eloise, the English half-sister to Alice and Paul, whose wedding brings all of them together again. As you might have guessed, just because everybody can come together doesn't mean that they'll cooperate. And within hours of their reunion, their problems become everybody's problems. Well, sort of. Anyways, they just end up making things worse for themselves before things finally get better. It's one of those stories. Yeah, nothing really unexpected or surprising occurs in this movie, in terms of plot twists or formula subversions. By the end of each character's individual first acts, you can get a good idea of how their storylines are going to go. And after maybe halfway through the film overall, it's not going to be surprising what occurs to them next. There's really no challenge to the cliches being used, which means the audience doesn't have to contend with anything out of the ordinary. The movie doesn't even try to weave together the 3 main story threads outside of a few brief moments like group dinners or wedding rehearsal. In fact, the film's story structure is almost a pattern of these story blocks, focusing on one character at a time exclusively, with 1 or 2 scenes that have everybody together sprinkled in here and there. It makes for a digestible experience, where it takes effort on your part to actually get lost in the narrative. Honestly, it just further exposes how weak each individual character arc actually is, which isn't helped at all by how flat the characters are at times. I would assume that the hope was for the performances of the cast to carry the writing, but they aren't of much help either. Having basic personalities being delivered with equally little depth, and even less that actually makes them interesting or memorable. The movie's technical production doesn't fare much better, though it doesn't even really seem to be trying. Even though the movie takes place primarily in England, it only barely sells you on this, looking more like a movie shot on backlots or set pieces or maybe one public road than the actual English countryside. Cinematography barely tries to be creative to compensate, taking up safe angles, simple framing, keeping characters in focus, and not really caring at all for a visual style. The same goes for the editing, staying practical and letting the writing and dialogue do its thing, though again, that isn't saying much at all. The music of the film is forgettable, or at least I forgot what it actually was. I wonder if that's why movies like to use pop songs. Whatever the case, this lack of a visual or stylistic appeal obviously does nothing to help the movie's other flaws. Ultimately, there's little that gives it anything worth wanting to stick things out and see what happens, because you can see the ending coming long before it actually hits. Overall, this feels more like a stretched out or a 2-part episode of some TV show rather than a standalone movie, thanks almost entirely to how it breaks up the story at optimal points for a commercial break to be had. All in all, it's tolerable enough to an extent, but the more that you tune into it, the more likely you'll fall out of it as well. The People We Hate at the Wedding, Claire Scanlon, 2022. 1.5 stars. I would not recommend watching this movie. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. I'd make a joke about having never been to England and that this movie convinced me not to go, but I'm still sure that this wasn't shot in the country at all. If it was, they must have had people in the crew who made sure that any shots hid any indication of where anybody was at any given moment.